Gallery Experience. Hidden Stories Behind Art. Episode 5. What is really behind the canvas? Imagine standing in front of an old painting. You see a face, a landscape, a figure, a beautiful arrangement of colors. Everything looks finished. But what if I told you that underneath the painting you are looking at, there might be another painting? Artists change their minds. They move figures. They repaint backgrounds. They remove objects. They completely abandon an earlier composition. And for centuries, these hidden decisions can remain invisible until someone looks beneath the surface. This is one of the most fascinating secrets in the world of art. A painting is not always exactly what it appears to be. When an artist begins a painting, they may not know exactly where the work will end. They may make a preliminary drawing. They may sketch the composition. They may place figures in certain positions. Then they begin painting, and suddenly they don't like something. Maybe the figure is too large. Maybe the composition doesn't work. Maybe the artist changes the story. Maybe they simply have a better idea. Instead of throwing the canvas away, they may paint over the original image. The new painting covers the old one. For the viewer, the hidden image disappears. But it doesn't necessarily disappear completely. The materials remain underneath. And sometimes modern technology can reveal them. One of the most important tools researchers use is imaging. Different wavelengths of light can behave differently when they encounter pigments and materials. Some imaging methods can reveal preliminary drawings. Others can reveal layers beneath the visible surface. X-ray imaging can sometimes show areas containing heavier elements. Infrared techniques can reveal certain underdrawings or changes. These technologies allow researchers to examine paintings without simply cutting them open. And what they discover can completely change our understanding of the artwork. Imagine looking at a painting and discovering that the artist originally placed a person in a completely different position, or that there was another object in the background, or that the artist originally painted a different face. Suddenly, the painting becomes a record of the artist's decision-making. You're no longer seeing only the finished image. You're seeing the process. And that can be incredibly revealing. Artists are often presented as people who know exactly what they are doing. But hidden layers remind us that painting is also experimentation. Artists make mistakes. They change their minds. They try different solutions. They cover things up. They return to earlier ideas. They struggle with composition. And sometimes they completely transform a painting. In other words, the finished painting may hide the journey that created it. Now, imagine discovering a hidden figure. A researcher examines an old painting. At first, everything looks normal. Then imaging reveals another figure beneath the surface. Maybe it was painted by the same artist. Maybe it was part of the original composition. Why did the artist remove it? Nobody may know for certain. Perhaps the figure didn't work visually. Perhaps the client requested a change. Perhaps the artist changed the subject. Or perhaps the artist simply changed their mind. This is where art research becomes part science and part detective work. Researchers gather evidence. They compare materials. They study the painting's history. They examine the artist's other works. They look for drawings. They study technical images. And then they try to reconstruct what happened. Sometimes they can determine exactly what changed. Sometimes they can only propose possibilities. And sometimes the mystery remains. That uncertainty can make the artwork even more fascinating. Now let's talk about something even more surprising. Sometimes the hidden painting may be by another artist. An old canvas might have been reused. A later artist may have painted over an earlier artwork. This happened historically because materials were valuable. Canvas was not always cheap. Artists sometimes reused surfaces. So beneath one painting there may be another work from an earlier period. Imagine buying an old painting and discovering that underneath it is another artwork that may be older and potentially more important. Suddenly, the object has two histories, the visible painting and the hidden painting. This is one reason conservators and researchers sometimes describe paintings as objects with layers of history. The surface is only the beginning. Now consider restoration. When conservators work on an old painting, they have to be extremely careful. They're not simply trying to make the painting look new. Their responsibility is to preserve what remains of the original artwork. That means every decision matters. How much should be cleaned? Should later additions be removed? Should damaged areas be reconstructed? Should the old varnish be removed? Could cleaning reveal original colors? These questions can create intense debates, because restoring a painting is not the same as repainting it. The goal is not to create a new artwork. The goal is to understand and preserve the existing one. Sometimes restoration reveals something unexpected. A darkened varnish may have made the painting appear much duller than it originally was. Cleaning can reveal brighter colors. A previously hidden detail may become visible. A face may suddenly look different. The artwork can seem to come alive again. But restoration also has limits. Some damage is permanent. Some information is lost. Some changes cannot be reversed. That is why conservators work so carefully. Now imagine what it would feel like to discover that a painting you have looked at for years contains another image underneath. The artwork hasn't changed. You have. Your understanding of it has changed. You suddenly realize that the artist stood in front of the same canvas and faced decisions. Should this figure stay? Should this color change? Should this object be removed? Should the entire composition be different? The hidden layer gives us a glimpse into the artist's mind. And perhaps that is the most fascinating part. Art history often focuses on the finished masterpiece. But the hidden layers remind us that masterpieces are created through decisions. Some decisions remain visible. Others disappear beneath the surface. And sometimes, centuries later, we get a chance to discover them. So the next time you stand in front of an old painting, look closely. You may think you're seeing one image, but there may be another story underneath. Another figure, another composition, another idea, another version of the artist's imagination, hidden beneath the paint, waiting for someone to discover it. Because a painting may have a visible surface, but its real history can be much deeper. And sometimes the most fascinating part of a masterpiece is the painting you cannot see. This is the hidden stories behind art.